Welcome into Inside Cowboys Training Camp, driven by Ford, here from Oxnard, California, and the site of Cowboys Training Camp, of course, alongside Haley Sutton. I'm Kyle Yeomans. Glad you're with us, and it has been a fun start to Cowboys Training Camp. We've seen pretty much everything under the sun to start these first 2 weeks, but now we've seen 2 padded practices, and the competition element has been there. 1-on-1, 7-on-7, and, of course, some red zone work. Mike McCarthy didn't waste any time getting the competition added.
No, he told us last week that this was what he was looking forward to get his football team ready to compete in 2023, was exactly what we have been seeing. And the players really stepped up as well. You heard all that chirping. There was one point in those red zone drills you were talking about, Trayvon Diggs really getting in the face of Dak Prescott after he got a PBU there. But it's really good just to see, again, the pieces are slowly coming together. You see where the improvement needs to be, but you also get excited about the things that look good. So it's always good to see them in pads.
Speaking of looking good and Trayvon Diggs, he did both of those things on Tuesday, returning from a toe injury. Really, it was precautionary. I mean, he was just basically being safe, and the coaching staff was being safe by letting him sit out a couple of practices. What did you think of Trayvon getting back into the fold? And you talked about a big PBU on Kevontae Turpin. He was running over and knocking it away. It was fun to watch.
Yeah, it's good to see him get back to his old self. And I know that the toe was, like you mentioned, it was precautionary. But I also liked whenever he was not playing, he was still involved. He was talking to Stephon Gilmore. He was even talking to CeeDee Lamb at one point, trying to give him some pointers on how to get past this secondary. So it's really good just to see him take that step, especially after that contract he just signed. So really growing into a player that Cowboys fans and this Cowboys defense can rely on. And he's also setting the example for the rest of the kids in that room, especially those younger guys. Eric Scott, I am talking about you. He's setting the example for that room, and it's been really fun to see him get back into the swing of things.
There's been a lot of talk of Stephon Gilmore being that veteran presence in the cornerback room, but how refreshing is it to see Trayvon Diggs step up and really embrace that role, but also know the role that he's in now as a second contract and an all-pro at that position. Now he's the one that's being the teacher, which is fun to see. Now you've got 2 professors running class in the quarterback room.
Yeah, Mike McCarthy said it best the other day. With more money comes more responsibility, and that's just the nature of how these contracts work. And so you've seen him already take those steps as well. As I mentioned, anytime he wasn't on the field, he was still on the field coaching up the receivers, coaching up those other DBs. So it's just good to see him take that leadership step, very similar to Tony Pollard, because Trayvon's not super vocal. So it's nice to kind of see him find his voice and find ways that he can still be a leader while still being Trayvon Diggs.
Trayvon Diggs coming back from that injury, and Kevontae Turpin coming back from missing some time for a very good reason, of course, the birth of his second child. But he's not wasted any time getting back into the mix as well. What are your impressions of Turpin?
Yeah, well, first of all, happy birthday, Turpin. He turned 27 today, so he's had a lot to celebrate over the last couple of weeks, and his play reflects that. I said this on our Girls Talk, Boys Talk podcast earlier today. He has quietly surprised a lot of people. I think his route running has improved, his sharpness has improved, his get-off has improved, and he's got a little bit more wiggle in his game. And it's not just that he is making catches, he's making the effort to make the big plays. Yeah. Every video I have on my phone of Kevontae Turpin is him making a diving catch to secure the ball, and that's the type of stuff that this coaching staff is looking for when you have a tight wide receiver for race. So he's doing it the right way.
When you think about it from a general roster standpoint, you're only going to keep about 6 wide receivers, and there is a huge competition happening. When we come back, I want to hit more on that with the wide receiver room. Isaiah Stanback joins the show. We'll talk about cut day and some of the stress that can be on these players whenever the cut day is looming out here in Oxnard, with more Inside Cowboys Training Camp right after this.
Inside Cowboys Training Camp, presented by Ford, is brought to you by AT&T, official sponsor of the Dallas Cowboys. Sleep Number, the official sleep and wellness partner of the Dallas Cowboys. And by your Texas Ford dealers. Ford is the best in Texas.
Go Cowboys!
This segment is brought to you by Academy Sports and Outdoors, official sporting goods retailer of the Dallas Cowboys.
That's one thing that I preach, once I get out here, just play. That's something I learned throughout college, not overthinking, know my material before I get out here and not trying to learn it as I'm out here. So, just being very comfortable, repeating it, going over the plays at night, going over it before I even come out here. So, just being very familiar with that and just playing.
Our sound, as always, brought to you by Sleep Numbers. We welcome you back to Inside Cowboys Training Camp, driven by Ford. Isaiah Stanback joins the show. And, Isaiah, you've been in situations before where wide receivers, and really just positions in general, cut day looms, and you got to get every rep, everything out of every rep, every practice. How stressful is that for the players to really get into that position?
It's very stressful. I mean, you think about the position battles that you have to encounter in some of these positions. Take the receiver group, for instance, where there's 13 guys really, bowling for 6 spots. And out of those 6 spots, 5 of them are already spoken for. So now you're down to, doing the math, you got about 8 guys, 7 to 8 guys that are really going after one position. And it makes it very difficult because the stress of not only learning the playbook, applying it, making sure that you line up properly, make sure that you take the right stem, run the right route, catch the ball, create separation, all these things, you're literally going through these checklists at every single play. And if you mess up one time, every human's entitled for one mistake. But if you mess up one time, that literally might be your opportunity that's gone.
Isaiah, along those same lines, I want to talk about Ronald Jones because obviously with the news coming out that he'll be suspended for 2 games, we had a chance to hear from him yesterday. When players get into situations like this where you're trying to follow the rules, you can't catch a break, especially for a guy like Jones, what's his mentality have to be, especially very similar to that wide receiver battle? He's competing for a spot as well.
Yeah, a little bit different for him, obviously being an established veteran, being a proven veteran at that. So he has a little bit more leeway in that regard. It's definitely a situation he still doesn't want to have to encounter, but it's the reality of the matter. I think the team might have been a little bit aware of it as well, so that bodes for him to his side as well. But he has to just get mentally ready. I mean, he's a vet. He knows what it takes physically. He has to adapt to this playbook and be out there and go out there and have these practices. He's not going to have those games early on to really get his feet wet, but leaning on his experience, he's in a better position than some of these other rookies are.
You talked about Jones in that running back situation because there's 4 or 5 guys fighting for one spot there as well. Rico Dowdle was mentioned by Mike McCarthy. He's been very impressive what you've seen from Rico to this point. What has the running back room started to look like for you whenever you get them back out on the field?
Yeah, it's going to be kind of curious. I'm curious to see exactly how they're going to pan out. I'm really looking forward to the preseason and seeing, because the running back room is going to be so instrumental to the success of this team. And if they don't get the running game going, a lot of the things that they're trying to do with Dak at the quarterback position aren't going to pan out. So obviously you got TP, he's franchised in there, but behind that, is it going to be Jones, right? Well, we know it's not going to be him for the first 2 games. Everybody's excited about Deuce Vaughn, the draft pick. Then you got the veterans in there, or I guess the vets at that position, Malik Davis and Dowdle. What can those guys bring? What's going to really set them and put them over the edge? What are they going to be able to provide that these coaches don't already know about them that really creates those degrees of separation and gives them the vote of confidence to put them in the game?
Yeah, continuing to build blocks to the regular season. It's all about construction here. As you can hear in the background, you can see they're laying the building blocks with mock game on the field. It's all about building here in Oxnard, and Isaiah Stanback does a fantastic job of doing so. We'll see Isaiah again on the show very soon. But when we come back, we've got plenty more to wrap up with. And let's take a look at the defensive side of the ball. Micah Parsons has had a great first week of practice. He continues to wreak havoc. We'll talk about that and more on Inside Cowboys Training Camp, driven by Ford.
This segment was brought to you by Academy Sports and Outdoors, official sporting goods retailer of the Dallas Cowboys.
Go Cowboys!
One final segment here from Oxnard, California, and Inside Cowboys Training Camp presented by Ford. Haley Sutton, I'm Kyle Yeomans, and man, Micah Parsons continues to be a one-man wrecking crew on the defensive line, coming off the edge, sometimes through the middle. I mean, how high is the ceiling for Micah and what he's shown already?
Man, he's fantastic. There's not a single person on this offensive line that they've mixed in that has had an opportunity to actually block Micah. The way he's getting to the quarterback, it's interesting to see. Just when you think Micah gets good, he takes it a step further, and we've seen that so far through these first couple of weeks of camp. And I feel bad for the first team that he's going to see because he's coming.
You know who else I feel bad for? I feel bad for all of the opponents on the offensive line that have to block him trying to make a roster spot. But that does it for us today on Inside Cowboys Training Camp presented by Ford. We'll see you tomorrow.
Inside Cowboys Training Camp, presented by Ford, was brought to you by AT&T, official sponsor of the Dallas Cowboys. Sleep Number, the official sleep and wellness partner of the Dallas Cowboys. And by your Texas Ford dealers. Ford is the best in Texas.
Go